Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're up to about 45 folks, and we will continue to let people in as we go along. My name is Philip Lynch. I'm the Director of Special Education Services for Montgomery County Public Schools. Thank you all for using your valuable time in the evening to be with us as we share some important information with you. I'm just going to say a couple words about how we build our agendas so that folks have that information if you're not aware. We do seek input from the community regarding our topics that we're going to share over the course of the year at these meetings. But we also use this opportunity to share timely updates with our community and get feedback and to respond to questions from the community, the special education parent community as well. And so for the last several years, we've used this opportunity during the winter months to share our budget information. And so we will be doing that this evening, and we'll also be sharing a topic that came to us as a request through you and through our SEAC co-chairs. So with that said, I'll give our co-chairs an opportunity to introduce themselves. I think we have at least two out of three of them, but I would be remiss if actually I didn't take care of our administrivia first and give Connie an opportunity to share the details about how folks can access the interpreter. So Connie, if you can give those instructions, that would be wonderful.
Sure thing. Buenas noches a todos. Estamos muy contentos de que puedan estar con nosotros esta noche. El director de Educación Especial, el señor Phil, estaba introduciéndose a sí mismo y quiere hacerles saber que ustedes tienen la posibilidad de seleccionar interpretación en español por medio de Zoom. Hay un botón en donde se puede hacer clic y directamente lo lleva a una persona que está haciendo interpretación en vivo. Cualquier cosita, si tienen alguna pregunta, pueden contactarme. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Connie. I've introduced myself. I also want to introduce Dr. Gwendolyn Mason, our Associate Superintendent for Special Education in Montgomery County Public Schools. Gwen, if you want to wave or say hello, that'd be great.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to the SEAC meeting, to all of our parents and certainly to all of our MCPS staff members. So good evening.
We have a number of MCPS staff members on this meeting, but we will not take up time introducing each of them. You will meet some of them, particularly Julie Hall, I believe Mr. Rob Bird, and our principals from our special schools as we go through our agenda. So you'll meet those folks as we go along. So the agenda this evening has two primary components. One is that we will be hearing some information about our special schools. You'll be hearing directly from the administrators of those schools. They're going to talk a little about the makeup of the school, the students that they serve, and their service delivery models at those schools. So we're excited to hear from them. And then we will be hearing about our budget plan and sharing our budget plan presentation. Some folks may have participated in an opportunity to hear that as we shared that with our budget planning committee yesterday evening. But this is an opportunity for us to share that information to a broader and wider audience. And so this is what we're going to be doing this evening. The other piece that I wanted to make you aware of is that if you do have questions, I believe you do have access to the chat. We're going to try to limit the number of live questions we can take by voice, but what we'll do is monitor the chat as we go along. We have the supervisors on this call for a reason, so that when, for example, I talk about the different professional development opportunities, you'll have an opportunity to ask any questions, and we'll take some time at the end of the presentation to answer those questions. So that's enough about the agenda. I'm going to ask our co-chairs if they could introduce themselves. So I know I see Amy and Connie. I'm not sure if Victoria is on yet, but go ahead, Amy, why don't you start?
Hey, I'm Amy Bloom, and thanks everyone for coming. We have two boys at Bethesda Elementary, a second grader and a fifth grader who receive special education. And I just want to remind everyone, I know public testimony is a little intimidating, but please, continue to voice your concerns or celebrations with us, or email any of the co-chairs, because it's really helpful to have your input and feel like we're all, partners in advocating. So thanks. That's it, Connie.
Thank you, Amy. I concur with everything you said. I can emphasize enough about please reach out to us if you have any questions, or we can provide you support or help you advocate, or if you want us to cover a specific topic that we can recommend the Department of Special Education at MCPS to do for the future SEAC sessions. I'm Connie. I'm a mom, just like most of all of you. I'm a parent. I have a son on the spectrum, and he's from the Asperger's program, and I have a daughter in kindergarten, and I'm very passionate about advocacy. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Our third co-chair, who may pop in later, is Victoria Aiello, and so she may be joining us a little later. So with that said, if you could turn the slide, please. So I want to start to introduce our special schools principals. And so we'll start with Ms. Sarah Starr, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about Longview. Before we get into the conversation about Longview, we sometimes get questions that folks ask about, well, how does a student get into a special school? And of course, in the world of special education, all decisions are made through the IEP process. And the schools that you're going to be hearing about this evening are special in the sense that they serve the needs of a very unique set of students, and students that have very unique needs. And so Sarah and the other principals are going to talk to you a little about the unique needs of the students that attend their school. And those decisions for those students to attend are always made, as I said, through the IEP process and discussion. We always seek to serve students in the least restrictive environment. Students served in these settings spend the vast majority of their time in the special education setting because for the most part, these are separate day schools. And I say most part because some of our schools are all of our schools, with the exception of Stephen Knowles, are now co-located. So we are looking forward to the opportunity to continue to expand some of our inclusive opportunities. It's a fairly new journey for some of the schools. Longview is our eldest co-located site in that front, and they're going to be our leaders in helping us to look for ways to take advantage of the fact that our sites are co-located. But we had two new schools that came online, in the past year and a half, and so we'll be hearing from them as well. And they'll be looking to learn from Longview about how to take advantage of the fact that these schools are co-located with general education or comprehensive school settings. So that's something that you'll be hearing about more as we move forward with those settings. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Starr, and she can talk to you a little about Longview. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks, Phil. Good evening, everyone. Very excited to be here today and kick off talking about our special schools. We are a group of 5, and we do serve what I think are the greatest students in MCPS. No offense to the other students being served throughout all of MCPS, because we are all great. So Longview, we are a separate public special education school, as Phil said, and we serve students with comprehensive learning needs, ages 5 to 21. Many times our students may be described as having severe or profound disabilities or multiple disabilities. And our students come to us with very diverse learning needs. All of our students have complex communication needs, which means they are nonverbal. So they use AAC and other assistive technology and supports to help them best communicate. Also, many of our students have limited motor functioning, need vision and hearing impairment support, and have complex medical needs. Our mission is very clear, that we want to support our students to be as independent as possible, as well as having the highest quality of life possible. And everything we do at Longview centers around those two important tenets. And our vision as a community is to support lifelong learning in a rigorous and collaborative environment. Based on our students' very complex needs, we have to work as a team. We have to collaborate. And so all of the structures in our school are based on those factors. And then you just see our collective agreements about communication, problem solving, and making sure that we hold ourselves accountable to our vision and mission. Next slide, please. So there's a lot I'd love to share with you about our school community here at Longview, but I just wanted to share a couple of highlights, and I'm sure you'll have access to the slides. But one thing that we do and value is family collaboration. So we do have a parent town hall with our families via Zoom every month, similar to SEAC. We also have a Longview Family Resource site, which is open to everyone. There's some really great resources. This is maintained by our amazing staff development teachers. So there's a lot of good support on that site in regards to communication supports, some fun dance videos, some literacy support, lots of really great stuff on there. We have enrichment programs, so our students are able to take part in being in a band, which happens tomorrow morning, drama productions, adapted dance, and more. We're very, very proud of our student-led online businesses. So our middle school and high school students are all a part of businesses that they have helped create and are running. We have RoarDash, which is similar to DoorDash, where they deliver snacks and goodies to staff on Wednesdays. It's very delicious. A soapery business where our students make handmade artisan soaps. Flower Power is a plant business, and the stationery, which you see on the screen, which is created by our students. We also this year are really focusing on using something called the SET framework, which is really just, again, looking at our students' strengths and also areas of need, and how do we best utilize assistive technology and AAC supports, again, focusing on independence. And then the last thing to highlight is just professional learning. We know that the technology to support our students is ever changing, as well as what the evidence and research is to best support our student specific learning needs. So I linked there some of the professional learning resources that our staff have been accessing to ensure that we all have the tools. And I'm really proud of all of our staff, especially our paraeducators, who are really taking part in this learning. So that is a little bit about Longview, and I'm going to turn it over to our next special schools principal.
Thank you, Sarah. And our next principal is Kim Redgrave of Stephen Knowles School. Before we hear from Kim, I want to acknowledge it looks like we're having some challenges with the chat function. So I assure you that it's not intentional, but what I will do is after each agenda item, so when we're done with the special schools, we will give an opportunity for some folks to ask some questions if they have questions of the special schools principals or of us about the process. So no worries, just hold on to your questions and we will take a few at the end if you are struggling to access the chat for some reason. Okay, so Ms. Redgrave, you want to take it away and talk about Stephen Knowles? You are on mute there, Ms. Redgrave.
Sorry about that. There's always one in a group, and it was me tonight. So there you go. So anyway, I'm Kim Redgrave. I'm the proud principal of Stephen Knowles, the sister school actually to Longview. Very proud partner with Sarah. We have a lot of shared programs, but there's also a lot of differences between. We are the only, as Phil will allude to, the last freestanding school. We're not migrated yet into their world of general ed, but I know it's a process, so we'll get there eventually. But we are a green school and have been for 8 years, which is a big deal for our program. It really is the core of everything we do. We serve the same population as Sarah alluded to, pre-K to 21 at Stephen Knowles. I believe Sarah does not have any PEP program. So we have PEP and school age, which is 5 to 21. Our main goal is to support the school improvement program. Like I said, our Green School initiative, which was started, and I see Dana Rothman on here, and I'm excited to see her because she was instrumental when we started that so many years ago. Hi, Dana. And it does lay the foundation because we are one of the only special schools that has a full size and exciting greenhouse right on campus, that we do a lot of work with our transition office with not only vocational training and activities, but also mindfulness and wellness activities that are linked through the Green School Initiative. in the past two cycles of not only being awarded the Green School certification, but also citations from the governor for our program work in alignment with Green School initiatives. We utilize a variety of supplementary curricular materials to support our pre-kinder and also our kindergarten through 21-year-old students. Again, like Sarah, our students are nonverbal, and we rely on AAC and various communication devices as well as PCS. Most of our staff are trained in PECS, which has been instrumental. That we started that about 8 years ago, and make sure that everybody is involved in that initiative as well. We work closely with the Interact office as well as, like I said, transition, as well as the STIRT office in planning and implementing all of our extracurricular activities for our students and our families. We host festivals throughout the year, which are interactive with families and all of our stakeholders and partners. Fall, winter, spring, and summer. We host barbecues, have rock bands, dance parties, art festivals, and aquatherapy. Right now it's closed down because of COVID, but we're very proud of the work that we do in there because we've initiated cross-curricular work with aquatherapy and math. So throughout aquatherapy sessions, there's actually math instruction. So that's been an exciting add-on that we started about 4 years ago, which we found tremendous success with. That's about it. I mean, there's so much to say, but I know Liz and Dana have so much to talk about with their programs, but we're very proud of the work we do at Stephen Knowles, and very proud of the work and support that we share with our other special programs throughout the county.
Before we go on, Ms. Redgrave, we have a person in the chat that wants to know if you can explain your Green School status, how that happened or what that is.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. That's a great question. I could talk about Green School all night, so Phil, I know Phil's in a panic now. I'm very proud of it because when I started there over 8 years ago, the green, like I said, having a greenhouse really made us a bit unique because it's a very big greenhouse and fully operational. And I used to teach biology, so it was just sort of a match made in heaven. So met with our team. Like I said, Dana was part of that group, and we decided to not only do cross-curricular work as far as like planning instruction, as far as science and math and literacy activities aligned with, sort of everything between scope and sequence and everything else, but also actually hands-on activities, and then even included art and music with it. And then once we realized that we could center really everything around our greenhouse, I had heard about a green school, I didn't know anything about it. So I heard that there was actually, a program. I reached out to the STIRT office through Montgomery County Public Schools. And they came out and talked to us about what it would entail to become a green school. It's a lot of work and a lot of commitment and a lot of time. And our team is really excited about being part of it. So you have to submit lesson plans that show that you're monitoring and following the guidelines for green school requirements. Not only standards, obviously, of recycling and those kind of things, but also just embedding all the green school about well-being and mindfulness in your lesson planning as well. So every 3 years, you have to get a plan together with artifacts and submit it to the state. And if you're moved forward, then yes, you get the certification. So it's pretty exciting.
Thank you, Kim. Did you go over this information on this slide? Are we ready to move on?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to just talk just a second about the our program overview, just to talk about what we do in the school aid side, especially, but the whole group morning and afternoon circles. Really wanted to just highlight the fact that, addressing social emotional needs is a priority for us, encompassing greetings, weather, days of the week, and calendar work, The reading, language arts, math, science, and social studies is also obviously part of the whole group instructional time. Skill-based instructional sessions with support from our support staff, and 17 students, 9 of the students are who are typically receive IIS students, and 8 are receiving services during the pandemic in this IIS program. We're calling it IIS, but it's really like the Stephen Knowles Virtual Academy. So I just wanted to sort of highlight what we were doing there, because it's the largest group that we have that we're working with on campus virtually.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. So we're going to move on then to Rock Terrace. And I believe Dana, who you introduced earlier, Dana, are you going to be representing the Rock Terrace community this evening?
Yes, myself and Dr. Megan Viganic are going to be talking about Rock Terrace tonight.
Okay, well, take it away. You want to introduce yourselves first and then take it away?
Sure. My name is Dana Rothman. I am the special needs coordinator at Rock Terrace. We are also a separate special education day school. We serve students who are in grade 6 all the way up to age 21. So we are a middle and high school. Our program is for students with significant academic, cognitive, behavioral, social, emotional, and/or adaptive needs. Our school is broken up into 3 levels. We have a middle school, high school, and upper school. As students progress through our program, we work on facilitating independence and preparing students for functional life skills. All students participate in community-based instruction once a week, where they have the opportunity to practice and generalize the skills that they learn in their classes out in the community. As students move into high school and upper school, we shift our focus more from those academics into those vocational skills and functional life skills to prepare students for what they're going to do after graduation. We have several in-school job sites that our high school students and then our upper school students get to take advantage of, including we have a greenhouse at our school, we have a wood shop, we have a culinary arts program, and we have a print shop where students work on filing, sorting, shredding, mailing. People from the county actually send us things to shred, things to sort, things to mail, and we do a lot of that for the county. We also, in our wood shop, we make like door stops for the county. We make name tags for doors for the county, and we send them out to different places, different schools, so that people can put in orders, and the students actually will make things in our wood shop to send out to different schools. And then we have some students when they're ready, we typically will start students off in those in-school job sites. And then as they become ready, behaviorally, socially, emotionally, we will send them out to job sites out of the building. So we have students right now who, go to grocery stores, who go to the MCPS warehouse for job sites, who go to animal shelters. So we have students all over the county. Unfortunately, at this particular time, that's paused because of the pandemic, but we hope to get back to those out-of-school job sites as quickly as possible. So that is a little bit about our program, and I'm going to hand it over to Megan Viganic to tell us a little bit more.
Hi, I'm Megan Viganic. I'm the school psychologist at Rock Terrace, and I'm really happy to be here tonight to co-represent Rock Terrace with Dana Rothman. So a little bit more about who we are as a program. Our students really have a diverse profile of needs, very diverse communication modalities and areas of strengths and need. So our program is really built on 2 principles that guide all of our work. Our classes really prioritize increasing independent communication, both expressive and receptive, through engagement in all of the course content. And whatever communication modality is right for that student, that's where we want to build independence. We have students who may type, write, use their voice for speech, may use a variety of high and low tech assistive and augmentative technologies for communication. We've really sort of honed in on communication as the bedrock of building independence for our group of students. And we see that connecting to all of our IEP goals and objectives. And we see that throughout our academic classes, our daily social skills classes that all of our students participate in, and our job sites. So our goals are really to meet each student where they are. That's academically, socially, emotionally. We have a great emphasis on social emotional learning in our school, and really taking the same kind of SEL emphasis that's in our comprehensive schools and modifying, adapting, and applying it and making it accessible to our students. We really want our students to leave Rock Terrace with the ability to self-regulate, to apply coping strategies that are effective for them, that they can use in the community and at work. So our teachers plan engaging lessons that use a variety of technology and manipulatives and real world applications to make the content come to life and really build that independence. We're always continually assessing with our state and local requirements, but also really our teachers are every day assessing students' independent communication.
Well, thank both of you for sharing information about Rock Terrace. I'm going to ask Derek to do me a favor and just go back 2 slides so we can show what that beautiful school looks like. And I'll just mention, and this will be true also for the next school, which is Carl Sandburg, when we hear from the principal there, Beth LaCourciere. And so I wanted to show this picture because this is one of our newest schools, and this is the side of the Rock Terrace Tilden co-location, and it is a beautiful facility. And we owe Dr. Mason a debt of gratitude for the work that she did to almost literally lay the foundation for the work that went into the construction around this building. I had the pleasure of picking up that process when she transitioned to a different school system. And now she's back to see that in fully in function. So she's come full circle on that journey. And so we owe her a debt for getting that work started. And it's just a beautiful facility for those of you who have not been able to see it. So with that said, if you could jump up to Carl Sandburg, and we'll hear from Beth LaCourciere, who is a principal of Carl Sandburg, and she is going to share information about the Sandburg Learning Center. And again, you see this fabulous picture of that brand new building as well, which the process for that co-location and that construction really started in parallel with the Tilden process. Although actually I should say it started earlier. I think it had a lot of fits and starts along the way, but the timeline for its completion ended up being along the same timeline. So Beth, you want to take it away?
Absolutely. I'm super excited to share. We do have an amazing building. We're co-located with Maryville, and we serve kids in grades kindergarten through 5th grade. And so Maryville is also on the picture. You can tell Carl Sandburg is blue. And so if you come to our buildings, our awnings are blue as well, and Maryville is yellow. So you can kind of see where the schools join there. And so, like Phil said, Dr. Mason has been over to Carl Sandburg and shared the amazing process that everybody went through to create this building. So I just thank everyone. We are a center, our school is very student centered. And so students do come to us through the IEP process, as Phil said. And our main goal is to make sure our kids are in the right setting and that we are able to move our kids through with data-driven instruction and skill-based and everything to get them to a less restrictive environment so that they are ready for middle school. Kids go to home base, to Rock Terrace. It's a wide variety. And so we really individualize that instruction as well as the social emotional piece, making sure that our kids are ready. And it's very exciting to have these meetings to just see them flourish and be able to go to their home base or whatever is appropriate for them. One thing I want to highlight about Carl Sandburg, through the pandemic, we always think of, you know, things that were horrible, but we really had a unique experience where we built relationships with our families. Families were with our kids, and it is amazing. That has really continued. It's a focus that Carl Sandburg has really made sure we continued. And so I would say with the team approach, it's very nice. We get on IEPs. We had 3 today, and you know, the parents are so excited because their kids are excited to come to school. And so when we welcome our kids in the morning to having them go on the bus, our goal is to promote academic and social emotional growth, and making sure, again, it's individualized. We have 14 classrooms and approximately 100 students. And so it is a bigger school as far as special needs for K-5, but we really individualize, and like everybody has said, it's data driven. It's really that individual piece that our special schools, all of us, really focus on. We go to the next slide, please. So again, we are a small public separate special education day school, and the uniqueness of Carl Sandburg is we have students that come in kindergarten or all throughout the year. And again, our main goal is to make sure that they are they get all the skills in academic and that individual attention to be able to get them to a less restrictive environment if that is what they're ready for. And so when you look at our building, if you come in, we have classes about 7 to 8 kids, 2 para educators. We have speech, OT, and PT that all push in. And so they are in the classroom, again, individualizing that support. The kids go to art and music and PE and media. They go to PE twice a week. So they have a special at least once a week, once every day of the week. We do have students that are diploma bound as well as on the alternative learning outcome track. And so we do use the Eureka and benchmark, and we just adapt that to make sure that we are meeting the kids and their needs. And so we are, you know, when we talk about diploma and we talk about ALO, again, there's a difference in track, but from the beginning, we always talk to the parents. They're always included in all of these things. And with that continued virtual piece that we do with parents, just to keep that communication going, it is amazing to see the growth of our students. Let me think. I just have to say, like, when we get into a night event, we had just a transition night for our 5th grade students, and just the family piece, the families that we've had, we know that when we're making decisions, it's always center-based of students first. And I just want to stress that so much. Everything we do at Carl Sandburg is putting the student at the focus. And so it's a great place, and I'm excited to be there. And again, the building is absolutely nice, beautiful, and kids are proud to be there. And we can't wait till the pandemic lightens the people that are allowed in so that everybody can come in and see it.
Thank you, Beth. So we have one more special school that is going to present, and that is Rika. And so we're going to hear from Jada Langston. So Jada, do you want to take it away?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you. I'm Jada Langston, acting principal at Rika. I am enjoying my time there. We are the mighty Rika, in which we are a shared campus with and shared programming and support with the Maryland Department of Health. And so one of the great things that we have at Rika, serving our students who majority have emotional disabilities and some autism, they get a licensed certified therapist at their fingertips every single day. Students are paired with a therapist from the clinical side. The ratio that the clinical therapists have to students is 1 therapist to every 6 students. So when students are in crisis or in need, their therapist is right there to provide that support, which supports many students, because a lot of times as they're processing some of the behaviors that they may display, the therapist is right there along with us when we're having those conversations with our students. We serve a population of 5th grade through 12th grade at this time. We have about 100 students. Our class ratios are 1 to about 10 students, a few classes that may be a little bit more. We are also diploma bound with our students as well. And we also work to get students to transition in. We have about 15 students at this time that are mainstreaming. 15 of them are actually at Edison in the technology department, ranging from being in the architectural programs all the way to the automotive and culinary programs. And so our students will attend Edison in the morning and then attend RICA in the afternoon. Again, these students have met the treatment plans that have been established for them as they come over to RICA, because again, we do have a therapeutic setting in which they do have a licensed therapist with them. Treatment plans can range for students that not only have the day goals, some students might even need the residential portion. And so we do have a residential portion at our school. It's comprised of about 30 students in the cottages that are right there located on the RICA community. And those students receive a 24-hour treatment plan for them. So they begin to receive those goals that they need in the home. And then they also come into the school day. The rest of our student population comes from the day, and they do receive transportation to attend RICA daily. Our students also have the opportunity to mainstream back to their comprehensive schools. And so we do have several students right now. We have one who is at Paint Branch High School, and then also another one that's at that just started Walt Whitman. So we're very excited when we see the progress of our students who are able to mainstream, and they also are still able to have that opportunity to still be at RICA with their therapeutic supports. This year, we've really been focusing on transitioning our students back to RICA and to school because the pandemic did have our students in many different places. So this year, we really spent a lot of time in helping them maintain their goals, revisit some goals that they needed to, and providing that space each and every day in the mornings with an extended homeroom to provide more social, emotional, and connection and understanding of what is asked of them for the day. And then we also debrief at the afternoon in our homeroom as they get ready to either transition down to the residential portion if they're resident students or transition to their buses for the afternoon. We're actually currently finishing up our last day of virtual learning. And so the majority of our students have been out this week. We do have about 10 students that were still there for the residential portion. So they were in the residential portion in the gym, actually completing their work virtually with the rest of their classmates. Some information or just great things to share about it was that in this transition to virtual learning, the relationships were already established. And so students were still ready to connect with their teachers and their peers and excited to see one another. And it wasn't like we were starting from what's going on or how long we're going to be in this. So many of the students did very, very well. Our students who did stay residentially are still able to access their therapists. And the therapists have been a big part of the virtual as well, popping in and out of classes and providing support for students as they needed it this year. I'm going to the next slide. We've also been focusing on equity this year, continuing excellence through equity, providing our high engaging educational experiences. Again, as we transition back to this year, we knew that we want to make sure as much engagement as possible. Following the MCPS pacing guide and curriculum and graduation requirements for our high school, we want to ensure that our students were ready and prepared for the courses that they were going to take. That we're also providing high quality instruction for all of our students and been approaching this work with understanding. We did have a challenging month during the month of January with our COVID cases, but this time gave us a chance to reset and reflect and extend an opportunity for students to get back on track and ready for the second semester. We've been very intentional about our work with our students, asking for their voice, our parents' voice, including our therapeutic and residential side in our conversations and collaboration and in our decision-making process. And this is really big at RICA because one decision is not just on a one-sided level. There's 3 parts to us, and we want to make sure that all 3 of those parts are together in the conversation. Many a times when we have meetings with our families, it's never just the school side or the residential side or the clinical side. We always come together as a team so that the family knows that we're all working together, we're all communicating together to provide the best treatment plan for their child. And we're inclusive of the whole school community. Again, as we've been going through this virtual learning, these decisions weren't made in isolation of just the school. All parts of us were together with it. And we've been doing a very good job this year, just keeping those lines of communication open and understanding what we need. When we admit students, we also have a total communication with that as well. And when we are looking at mainstreaming our students, we also have a total communication with that. So the whole process is always open and inclusive of all of the parts that make up our students' teams to make sure that our student knows that we are for them and supporting them, and that all parts of their team is working together to provide them with the best educational plan that provides that therapy and support that they need to be successful.
Thank you so much, Jada, and thank you to all of our principals and representatives who shared information about the special schools this evening. I know how proud you are of your school communities, of your students, and the work that you do every day to support the very unique needs of those students. We had a couple of questions. I'll just say a few summarizing comments that I think will respond to those questions. I do want to reiterate the fact that, and I think Beth drove this home, that the decisions for students to be served in these communities is based on the data that we have on how those students are performing. It's an IEP team decision, and it's also a decision that's made after we've considered all of the other less restrictive options. So these are some of our students who have some of our most significant needs, and they're served in these very intense settings. So that's a little bit about the process. There was a question about whether all of the special schools serve students who are working towards alternate learning outcomes, and the answer is no. So Stephen Knowles, Longview, and Rock Terrace serve students that are working towards alternate learning outcomes. Carl Sandburg Learning Center has a combination. They have students that are working towards grade level standards, as well as students for whom there's been a data-driven decision for students to be shifted to the alternate learning outcomes. And as Jada shared, RICA is the school that serves students working towards their grade level standards and towards their diploma. So I hope that answers that question. So at this time, we're going to shift to our next topic, and we're going to hear about the budget plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Julie Hall.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity this evening. My name is Julie Hall. I'm the Director for the Division of Business, Fiscal, and Information Systems in the Office of Special Education. Tonight, you're going to hear from the Associate Superintendent in the Finance Office, Mr. Rob Riley, who will go over a broad picture of funding and planning for our future, as well as some key dates. And then I will dig into a little more details in terms of the special education budget itself, as well as looking at some of our priorities that our special education staffing plan committee developed, and how those were placed into the budget. So we're going to start from the beginning with that broad overview. And so I'm going to ask Mr. Riley to begin with looking at the funding issues that are facing MCPS budget as a whole.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, thank you. Next slide, Julie. So I'm just going to give you a broad overview of the budget development process. And the first thing that we look at is our enrollment, because not only does that drive staffing levels, but it's a big component in what our funding level is going to be from not only the county, but also the state too. So on the county level, K-12 enrollment dictates what our maintenance of effort level funding will be. Similar to how special education has maintenance of effort laws, for the county funding, what they have to do is provide at least what they gave us per student from the previous year. And as you may or may not know, we consider maintenance of effort somewhat of a misnomer, because it doesn't include inflation, rate changes, as well as the increasing cost of salaries and staffing as well too. So due to the fact that our enrollment actually went down over the last 2 years, our maintenance of effort funding from the county calculated to be a negative $31 million. So right off the bat, we were starting in the hole, basically. We did also have some, even though the next item there is Blueprint for Maryland's future funding. So that's the a component of the state funding. But due to the fact that enrollment was down too, we had some uncertainties about our state funding as well too. And with those two things in place, we had to develop what we call a same service budget. So in normal years where enrollment's increasing and we have more certainty about our funding, the different departments and divisions will look at needs, student needs, and determine what we want to do to meet those needs. And we call it an accelerator process. We'll introduce accelerators. But this year's budget at this point, we do not have any accelerators in there. So in the development of a same service budget, we look to the different chapters, we call them, which is how our departments are organized. And the chapter leaders will look and see what they can do within their budget to help kind of meet some of those needs, but stay cost neutral. So that's just a little background on our funding uncertainties. Another thing that led to uncertainty was our healthcare costs. So one of the things that is in this budget is an increase for $30 million for our healthcare fund, which is a separate fund, but the operating fund actually is the biggest revenue source for that fund. We do have employee contributions towards these funds as well too, but the largest revenue source is the operating fund. And we haven't actually contributed to that in the last few years, any meaningful increase. And what we're seeing now, what our healthcare consultants have told us is that due to COVID, a lot of folks have kind of deferred doing surgeries or even going to the doctor at all. So what we're seeing is a backlog of healthcare costs we're seeing it actually come to fruition now, and we're expecting it over the next year as well too. And under the risk of like having that fund go negative, we have to put some money into that fund. So that's one of the pressures on this year's budget as well too. But one thing you might have heard about is we do have ESSER funding. So that is relief funding for schools due to COVID. And the intention of ESSER funding is for the safe return to schools, as well as to mitigate learning disruption, which all schools basically have experienced that. And some of the things we have listed here is continue with virtual learning levels, well-being needs and supports, and learning recovery, as I mentioned. These are all objectives that we're going to utilize these ESSER funds. And just to give you an idea, so our ESSER funds are for ESSER 3, the third round of this, is $252 million. Normally, and this is a federal funding source, normally federal funding is about 3% of our budget, but when you include ESSER, it's about 14%. So we want to be very deliberate and strategic because there's an end to this federal funding. We're allowed to utilize that $252 million over the course of 2.5 more fiscal years. So what we're going to be doing is looking at some of the things that we're doing to mitigate learning disruption and to have a safe return to schools, and then decide with stakeholders, what are we going to actually try to incorporate into the operating budget. So those are some of the issues that we're looking at now. Next slide, Julie. So planning for the future, and it's hard to, like I said, we do have this ESSER relief funding that we can kind of use to help try to stage that plan. But we also have a new strategic plan that's going to be coming out. And there we focus on academic wellness, well-being and support, as well as professional and operational excellence. And the goal here is going to be try to use those relief funds with our same service budget to try to attain some of these things that we're looking at, which is increasing mental health and wellness, additional support for our struggling learners, using our virtual learning where appropriate. To give you an idea, our virtual academy, it was stood up with our ESSER funds last year, but the intention is that we're going to try to move that. That's one of the areas where we are going to try to attempt to move that into our operating budget. So that would be supported within the operating budget. Some of the other areas are broadening our efforts for our most impacted schools, enhancing staff capabilities through professional development, which there are funds allocated towards that too, as well as maintaining our staff and operations. Next slide, please. So these are some of the key dates that, some of them are already passed. The budget development season starts on July 1st. And in the summer and the fall is where we're, that's where we're reaching out to a variety of our stakeholder groups, including the Special Education Staffing Plan Committee. And we're looking for priorities from those stakeholder groups. And then we're trying to align them with the priorities of the superintendent and the board. We did already have, in January, we had 2 budget hearings as well as 3 budget work sessions. But as I was speaking about before with revenue uncertainty, we just got the governor's budget last week. And we're actually still kind of deciphering, all the different aspects of that state funding. So we felt it was important to have another work session. That's going to be February 22nd. And then there'll be February 14th would be another work session, and February 22nd would be another hearing so we can kind of hear from the public. And then there's a tentative adoption of the board's budget on February 24th. All this because we have to get it to the county by March 1st, and then the county executive is going to release his budget on the 15th. Finally, it'll come back to us, and then by June 7th, we do a final adoption. So the budget's ready to be spent on July 1st. So that was kind of a broad overview there. I'm going to pass it to Julie, and she's going to talk to you about some of the effects of the budget on special education.
The next slide, please. So as Mr. Riley mentioned earlier, the budget is broken up into several chapters. Chapter 1 has to do with the budget associated with schools. And within that chapter, it separates it into different groups. And this is the special education budget. So you can see that there's $281 million proposed for the FY23 budget. You can also see that 97% of this is on salaries and wages. And that's both from the local funds, and then we also get additional grant funds through IDEA. On top of that, the budget consists of contractual services. So we use contractual services in the areas of occupational and physical therapy to provide services for students where there may be long-term vacancies, so that we can ensure that all students receive their IEP related services. Our grant funds are typically used to fund our nursing services, art therapy, and interpreters. A small percentage of this Chapter 1 budget includes supplies and materials so that schools can have what they need in their classrooms. In addition, there is employee benefits, local mileage, and then we have a small portion of equipment in Chapter 1 that provides for assistive technology. Next slide, please. So this is an identification of what's called our budget ask, and we are asking for 18.225 full-time equivalent positions at the sum total of 974,270. This consists of 25.95 special education teacher positions. It also consists of a decrease in 7.725 positions for paraeducators. And you may ask yourself, how is that? How can we have a decrease? Well, if you look at all of the positions in all the programs across the entire school system, there are increases in enrollment by program and decreases school by school, since we budget at the school level by program. And so those increases and decreases are all rolled up And as a result, there is this decrease based on those enrollment changes by program, by school site. We also have an additional $60,000 approximately in the budget for substitute teachers and temporary part-time salaries to support the new teachers that we were adding to the budget for FY23. Next slide, please. So this is chapter 4. Typically, this is positions that are considered central office positions. There are several positions within chapter 4 where direct supports and services are in school buildings, such as our infants and toddlers programs. They are located in chapter 4, but they are directly supporting students. Again, there's 45% of this, $108 million that goes towards salaries and wages, both on local and IDEA. Again, we have contractual in chapter 4 that covers our speech, occupational and physical therapy, our nursing, our medical assistance fees, and our resolution and compliance. We also have supplies and materials. And then if you look at that other column, you say, what is that 52%? There's approximately $53.8 million for non-public tuition. So we provide funding for students who are in our non-public schools. And then there's also our employee benefits and our local travel or mileage reimbursement and field trips that is consistent in our chapter 4 budget. Next slide, please. So as Mr. Riley was going through the list of dates and saying that we begin our budget process in July, our special education staffing committee, which is about 30 members, met on July 27th, in which we brainstormed together the priorities that we would like to see considered in our FY23 budget. It's a great evening in which we can discuss the needs and challenges that are occurring in our special education realm and propose different ideas of what we can put into the budget. And those recommendations are considered and again looked at the alignment with the superintendent's strategic plan. And so then we determine 4 priorities that we would move forward for consideration. And those are the ones that are on the screen that this committee decided together. So you can see the first one is maintaining the ongoing training for special education staff on tiered interventions and expanding that training beyond special educators, but to general education staff members. And we did maintain that training funds for FY23 for interventions. We collaborate very closely with the Office of Curriculum Instruction and Instructional Programs to ensure that our general education colleagues are joining us in those trainings. Our second priority was to maintain the current staffing allocations and structures in our programs and services for students with socially, emotional, and behavioral needs, and to provide that multidisciplinary approach. So we did maintain that in our 23 budget. You will also notice if you dig really deep into that budget, you'll see that we added an additional social worker for our SES programs. There's 1 social worker per school that's assigned at that school location. Our third priority is to expand inclusive opportunities for students in self-contained programs and consider reviewing and expanding our homeschool model support at schools that host self-contained programs. So one of the things that we do specifically with all of our budget and staffing is that we look at student enrollment and hours of service on students' IEPs down to the individual school basis, so that we not only staff based on a specific formula, but to get a clear understanding of what's going on at the school. And so we have met with our school partners, we've met with our supervisors so that we've been able to adjust based on those needs. The last priority is to continue to de-escalation training and create additional training opportunities that focus on initiating de-escalation strategies as a proactive approach. So we continue to implement our nonviolent crisis intervention professional learning and other professional learnings, both initials and refresher courses throughout the year. Those are specifically funded through our grant funds. So that's where you would see that. And in a minute, Mr. Lynch will be going over some of our other professional learning opportunities that are funded through this year's fiscal budget, as well as continuing on in the future. So I'm going to turn it over to him to give you some of the insight into our professional learning.
Thank you, Julie. So first, I want to share a little bit of a summary and show you how I'm going to break down the professional learning that we've prioritized for this year and professional learning that's going to be moving forward into our FY23 school year for next year. So first, I'll share that we work across offices to develop and to provide professional learning to our special education and general education teachers. We focus on ongoing technical assistance and consultation to our special education and general education service providers in order to make sure that we are providing our students with the best possible education and access to the curriculum that is possible. We work across different departments. One example that I would share with you would be our work closely with the Office of Curriculum and Instruction that we've engaged with recently as we have adopted new curriculum resources for our students. We partnered with them on training of all teachers, including special education teachers and paraeducators, to make sure that our staff know how to scaffold and to make sure that there are on-ramps for that curriculum for all of our students who need to access the curriculum in different ways. And that's just one example of the ways in which we've partnered with other offices for professional development that is taking place recently. The other highlight that I'll say in that middle bullet is that we have some strategic priorities that we really focus on that are based on some of the data that we currently received from the state of Maryland and that we analyze ourselves internally. And that data really shares that we need to continue to make improvements around serving students in less restrictive environments. We spent some time today hearing about some of our most restrictive environments, our special schools, which is why those are serving a very small percentage of our students with disabilities. The vast majority of our students with disabilities are served in primarily in the general education setting. But we want to always be working towards increasing our number of students who are being served in that setting. And so that's one of our priorities. Another priority is improving our academic and behavioral outcomes for students with disabilities. We are constantly trying to improve those outcomes and that data using our evidence of learning measures to see how much progress we're making for our students and for our schools in that area. And then we have areas of disproportionality that we are addressing in Montgomery County Public Schools. The primary areas that we are focused on right now, one area of disproportionality is referred to as disciplinary removals. More common term is suspension. So when students are removed from school for a disciplinary reason, currently Montgomery County disproportionately removes students with disabilities. And it significantly disproportionately removes African-American students with disabilities from the school setting at a higher rate than general education, their general education peers. And so that's an area that we are targeting and focusing some of our professional learning around. Another area of disproportionality that we are at risk is identification of African-American students for intellectual disabilities. So we're not currently in that range of disproportionality, but we are at risk. And so we are putting efforts towards that work as well this year as we work on to make sure that our students that are identified with intellectual disabilities are done so using a process that has the best fidelity possible. Below on the bottom bullet, it just breaks down the 3 different categories where we focus our grant work. This is the way that MSDE has helped us to organize some of the grants that come our way. And so we have these three primary areas. One is early childhood. You're going to hear me talk a little bit about that. And we have some experts from our early childhood world on the call today. So at the end, if we have some questions we need to get to around that, those professional learning opportunities that I mentioned, we will try to address those. The access, equity, and progress area is really our work for our school age or kindergarten through 12th grade students, and then our secondary transition area. And so those are the ways in which our grants are broken down, and we will be providing professional learning in all three of those areas that is ongoing this year and into next year. So if we could go to the next slide, I'll talk a little about those different areas. So early childhood, we firmly believe that the earlier that we can have students with disabilities accessing the general education setting and working alongside their general education peers, it's going to lead to the greatest outcomes. And so that is our effort to increase those opportunities for our earliest learners. And so we are taking the approach of providing coaching of our professional staff using job embedded training. And that does take coaches, that does take training for those staff members. And we have struggled recently to serve our teachers in a professional development manner that takes them out of the classroom. So one of the things that we're doing is really working with those staff members in the classroom through those coaching opportunities, as well as offering them opportunities outside of the school day to access professional learning as well. We use evidence-based practices around co-teaching, social emotional learning, and behavior management, and those are some of the key areas of focus for our professional learning in that area. For early learning achievement, our coaches provide a professional learning and job embedded support around those curriculum components that I mentioned earlier. So Eureka is the curriculum that is our K-5 math curriculum, but it also reaches down into that pre-care area so that we can start to prepare those students for kindergarten readiness by making sure that they have access to those same curriculum constructs that will then filter over into their kindergarten experience. And the same is true with Benchmark. That is our elementary ELA or English Language Arts curriculum. And that curriculum also has a component that is appropriate for our pre-K students where they learn those earliest pre-literacy skills and begin to prepare them for that kindergarten experience. In the social emotional area, there's a pyramid model framework, which is a model that I would not be an expert in, but I can allow others to speak a little bit more about later on if you have questions about that. But it's really about helping to prepare our earliest learners with all those social emotional skills that that they need in order to become prepared for kindergarten and enter that school age world. The child outcome summary and the early learning assessments are both assessments and data points that help us to understand whether our students are on the right track for that kindergarten readiness. And there are measures that we use to judge ourselves about how we're doing with that kindergarten readiness as a system. And so those are indicators that we use to measure that. So that's the early childhood area. If we want to move on to access, equity, progress, which is our K-12 area. So as I mentioned earlier, one of our primary focuses is increasing the percentage of students that are served in those less restrictive settings. And so one of the things that we are focused on is making sure that we are training our staff that do serve students in those restrictive settings to make sure that our students, if they are able to transition to a less restrictive setting, that we have every opportunity available for them. And one of the things that we've done this year is provide after-school opportunities, and we did this last year as well, for those staff members who serve students in those discrete programs to learn as a community after school hours. This is an opportunity for them to work specifically with the supervisors of those programs and where they can form a community of learning, and then really focus on problems of practice that are specific to their work. We've trained teachers in the alternate learning outcomes on the curriculum, data collection, and behavior management. We've trained teachers and continue to train teachers on assistive technology using our high incidence assistive technology team. We've trained folks on inclusive models for students with significant cognitive disabilities. We've been working with a small group of pilot schools, and next year we're going to be looking at taking what we've learned and overcoming some of the barriers for including students with significant cognitive disabilities in the general education setting to a broader scale, so that we can start to take that, to upscale that to other schools. We've also continued our work around professional development and behavior strategies through our training on de-escalation strategies, our nonviolent crisis intervention work that Julie mentioned earlier. And so those are ongoing trainings that we have available for staff that help make sure that we are meeting the needs of students with social, emotional, and behavioral needs. In the area of academic achievement, this year we've had after school monthly meetings with our elementary teachers. We have some quarterly meetings that will be coming up as well, where they'll have an opportunity to take part in 3-hour professional learning sessions. We meet regularly with our new teachers. We have a professional learning community with our new teachers that we started 2 years ago, which has been a huge success. That is an effort really to make sure that we are retaining teachers, supporting them in the field. As we all know, there is a shortage of special education teachers, and we want to make sure that for those new teachers who are working their way through that most challenging year, their first year, that they have a community of learners around them and staff from our office who can support them with all of their needs. And so that's been a great success. And then finally, we do a lot of work around supporting the training for Tier 3 interventions. And we have worked to ensure that each of our schools has a suite of interventions that are provided or can be provided to our learners as needed. And so we want to make sure that each school has professionals that have the training and the resources that they need to be able to offer these research-based interventions. Next slide. In the area of secondary transition, we've broken it down, and Simone Guinness, I don't want to take credit for the way this is organized, has broken it down into these 3 different categories: professional learning, transition activities that are focused specifically for students, and then parent resources and information. And so our budget goes towards the work in all 3 of these areas. So there is training for our TSTs, that stands for transition support teachers. We have transition support teachers associated with all of our high schools, and Ms. Guinness's office does a lot of work to make sure that they are engaged with our oldest learners in those transition activities. So that takes training. She works with our new TSTs to make sure they have what they need to make it through their first year in that position. And then we also work specifically with our TSTs to support students working towards ultimate learning outcomes. We have training on assessment tools that we put in place in the summer. There's been the development of a transition toolkit for the TSTs to use at the middle school level. So we've trained staff on that area. And then we've also put some of our budget towards developing work-based learning resources that can be accessed in the virtual environment. Just as everybody's been impacted through the different shifts that we've made to virtual, and it was mentioned earlier by one of our special schools. Right now, there is a pause on the community-based instruction and ability to access that work-based learning out in the community until some of our health and safety metrics become a little bit safer. We are accessing those resources virtually. And so we have taken the time to develop some of those resources for those TSTs so that they can continue to work with those students in the virtual world on those transition activities. Here's a list of some of the different activities that are available for students. There's reference to scholarships from Montgomery College Workforce Development and Continuing Education courses. Under Ms. Guinness's leadership, there's been a development of what we call Transition 101 and 201. Those are online self-advocacy courses that are designed for students to work on those independent and self-advocacy skills. And then there's a litany of different summer programs that have been developed to help support students that partner with some different agencies such as DOORS and PREEDS. And so those are examples of some of the different resources. And again, if you have specific questions about those, Ms. Guinness should be able to answer those. And then we have a list of the parent resources. The transition office conducts or hosts different evening events where they share information with parents about these different transition topics, adult services, there's a college night, financial planning, and then there's a doors night. In addition, virtual adult service agency visits occur, and then they have developed some publications that are a wonderful resource as well. So that's a summary of those three primary areas: early childhood, K-12, and transition services. So at this point, we'll take some questions. I know that there was a question specific to some of the budget language that we were using. Julie, are you able to take that question in terms of chapter 1, chapter 4? You want to start there?
So I can't see the questions, but chapter 1 is specifically for the budget as it relates to schools. So what is assigned or allocated to schools, whereas chapter 4 is what's considered central office allocations, a little bit different than other chapters in the school system. A lot of our budget in chapter 4, although it is at central office, does provide some direct services such as our infants and toddlers, and our non-public budget provides those funding for those services directly to students as well.
She just wants to know how the who makes up the special ed staffing planning committee? Who's on it?
Who's on the special education staffing planning committee, Julie?
So there is a variety of stakeholders, which include community groups, as well as parents, as well as MCPS staff members. For the specific list of participants on the committee, if you go to the Montgomery County Public Schools website and type in the search engine for special education staffing plan, it will have a list of all of the committee members, as well as give you the priorities, as well as the data that the questions that we used in our committee meeting in July, and also gives you programmatic overviews and staffing guidelines in there. So I encourage you all to go to the website to see that publication. It's a publication that we create every year.
Thanks, Julie.
Just email me and we can add you. We always like to have as many members as possible, especially in our summer meetings when we can brainstorm and looking at different priorities. We share specific data related to our strategic plan and how that might impact what we're recommending for the submission in our budget.
Okay, great. And we had a question about the outside vendors. It seems like it would be a really broad question to try to answer right before we go into our networking, but we do use vendors to help us train for the interventions. But we also use vendors sometimes for like our private duty nurses, or sometimes staff when we don't, we like, for example, music therapy. So that question might be better off if you email me, and I'll put my email address in the chat. Let's see, there's one other question, and then maybe we'll go into the next part of our agenda. But this one is about OTPT services. So again, on this one, I think I'll probably just put the email address into the chat about how they're determined. And I think I'll go ahead and just put the contact person of the person into the chat. So if that's all, and I know that Derek doesn't have any more questions from people, we would need to make Connie a co-host, right?
Before you go there, I'll just reiterate in terms of the question about the outside vendors. So I want to emphasize the fact that whenever we engage in work with an outside vendor, we complete what's called a request for proposal process, meaning that we are engaged with our vendors around the process of reviewing all of the different proposals that are made by the different vendors. And there's an internal process that we use to determine which vendor we would go with. before we would select any outside vendor. And as I think Jen was saying, we would only use a vendor when it is something where there's a need that we could not satisfy internally through our current workforce. So at this time, I think what we'll do, as Jen mentioned, is transition over to our networking portion of our agenda. We want to thank you all for being here. I will just give a little preview. Again, with the agenda, we look for input around the agenda. Often there are pieces where we need to share information with you, like this evening. We have received some requests to hear more about how our school system serves students who are struggling with dyslexia. That is a topic that goes beyond just the special education world. There are students that struggle with dyslexia along the continuum. Some of those students have been identified with disabilities and some are not. And so that's an area where we really want to partner with our curriculum office, because there is a component of that work that takes place in the general education curriculum tier 1 teaching world. And so we will be presenting information about that in our February meeting. Our next meeting, I believe, is February 24th. Double check that date. And that is on our agenda, all of the different dates, and that does look correct, February 24th. And so preview for that February 24th meeting is that we'll be collaborating with our Office of Curriculum and Instruction to share information with you about how we serve students with dyslexia across what we call a multi-tiered system of supports. Okay, little preview. All right, folks, thank you so much for being here this evening, and we'll turn it over to you, Connie. Take care.